Imagine a place where survival is a daily battle, where the law is meaningless, and where the weak are preyed upon by the strong. Inside the world's toughest prisons, inmates are not just serving time, they are fighting to stay alive. These are places where gang wars dictate life and death, where overcrowded cells force prisoners to sleep standing up, and where brutal guards, or sometimes the inmates themselves, control everything. From the violent gang-dominated prisons of Latin America to the solitary confinement cells of the United States, these institutions test the very limits of human endurance. Some prisoners are locked away in isolation for decades, losing their sanity in absolute silence. Others are thrown into overcrowded, lawless hellholes where even a simple meal can be a fight to the death. Corruption thrives, and justice is often a distant dream. Is prison meant for punishment, rehabilitation, or something far worse? In this journey, we'll step inside these terrifying walls, uncovering stories of brutality, resilience, and the thin line between survival and despair. Welcome to the world's toughest prisons, where every day is a battle and freedom is a forgotten dream. The world's toughest prisons have long existed as places of punishment, deterrence, and sometimes rehabilitation. However, not all prison systems function in the same way. Around the world, some correctional facilities operate under brutal, inhumane conditions where survival becomes a daily battle. These prisons are home to the most dangerous criminals, murderers, gang leaders, drug lords, and even political prisoners, forced to live in overcrowded cells, often with little access to basic necessities. This story delves deep into the world's toughest prisons, exposing the harsh realities of life behind bars in some of the most notorious facilities. From the brutal gang-run prisons of Latin America to the isolated supermax facilities of the United States, each system tells a different tale of crime, punishment, and the thin line between justice and cruelty. The purpose of prisons, justice or control. Prisons exist to punish criminals and protect society, but their functions extend beyond simple confinement. Some focus on rehabilitation, helping inmates reform, while others enforce severe discipline through solitary confinement and harsh treatment. The difference between these two approaches often depends on the country, political environment, and the crimes committed by inmates. In Norway's Halden prison, for example, rehabilitation is the primary goal. Inmates live in comfortable cells, attend therapy sessions, and engage in work programs to prepare for reintegration into society. The belief here is that even the worst criminals deserve a chance at redemption. Contrast that with Venezuela's La Sabaneta prison, where survival depends on power, violence, and gang affiliation. Guards have little control, and prisoners enforce their own rules through brutal force. In such prisons, being weak means becoming a target. Arrival. The first day behind bars. Entering a maximum security prison for the first time is a terrifying experience. Upon arrival, new inmates undergo strict searches, are stripped of personal belongings, and assigned a prisoner number. The reality of their new life quickly sets in as they are marched down long corridors lined with iron bars and the echoes of shouting inmates. In Brazil's infamous Carandiru prison, before its closure, new prisoners were often subjected to beatings by guards or even attacks from fellow inmates. Some prisons force new arrivals to prove themselves by fighting, while others push them into gangs for survival. The difference between a life of suffering or a chance at protection often depends on making the right connections quickly. For those who fail, isolation, beatings, or even death may follow. Daily life. A struggle for survival. A day in the world's toughest prisons is marked by strict routines, poor conditions, and extreme violence. In overcrowded prisons like Quezon City Jail in the Philippines, prisoners sleep in hallways, stacked on top of each other due to lack of space. Diseases spread rapidly, and basic hygiene is almost non-existent. Inmates must follow strict, often unwritten, codes of conduct. Disrespect can lead to deadly fights, and food supplies are sometimes controlled by prison gangs. Corrupt guards may smuggle in drugs, weapons, or even prostitutes for a price. For many prisoners, The goal is not to reform, but simply to make it through another day alive. Gangs and power struggles. In the most lawless prisons, gangs rule. In places like El Salvador's San Salvador prison, MS-13 and Barrio 18 control everything: food, security, and even prison staff. Violence is constant, and new inmates must choose a side or risk being targeted. In Mexico's Topo Chico prison, rival gangs have turned cell blocks into war zones, with makeshift weapons hidden in walls and beneath beds. The law of the outside world holds no power. Only the rule of the strongest survives. For gang leaders, prison is not a punishment, but a headquarters for operations. Many continue running drug cartels, ordering murders, and making deals from behind bars. Solitary confinement, the worst punishment of all. For those who break prison rules or attempt to escape, solitary confinement is the ultimate punishment. In ADX Florence, the United States' most secure supermax prison, inmates spend 23 hours a day in small concrete cells with no human interaction. For some, the silence becomes unbearable. Prisoners have been known to talk to themselves for hours, hallucinate, or even lose their grip on reality. Studies show that prolonged isolation can cause irreversible psychological damage. Yet, in many tough prisons, solitary confinement is not only a punishment, it is a death sentence. Guards may use it to disappear troublesome inmates, leaving them in dark, windowless cells with no food or water until they die. Corruption and escapes. In many of the world's toughest prisons, corruption is rampant. Guards accept bribes to smuggle in contraband, provide luxuries to powerful inmates, or even look the other way when violence erupts. In some cases, wealthy prisoners live in luxury, enjoying private suites, television, and gourmet meals, while poorer inmates struggle to survive. Escaping from such prisons is nearly impossible, but history has seen some daring breakouts. In 2015, Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman famously escaped from Altiplano prison through an underground tunnel built beneath his cell. Other prisoners attempt escape by bribing guards, hiding in laundry carts, or even digging through prison walls. For those caught trying to escape, the punishment is often brutal: solitary confinement, severe beatings, or execution. Hope and redemption. Despite the violence and horror, some inmates find a way to survive and even reform. Religious groups, educators, and human rights organizations work within these prisons to provide education and rehabilitation programs. In some cases, former gang members leave their criminal past behind, choosing to study law, learn a trade, or help younger prisoners avoid their mistakes. Others turn to religion, finding peace through faith in the most hopeless circumstances. However, for many, hope is an illusion. Sentences are often extreme, with life imprisonment for minor offenses, and some prisoners never get the chance to prove they have changed. Conclusion. The future of prisons. As crime rates rise in certain parts of the world, governments continue to build harsher, more secure prisons. However, some nations are shifting toward alternative forms of punishment, such as rehabilitation centers, house arrest, and community service. The question remains: should prisons focus on punishment or rehabilitation? Do extreme punishments reduce crime, or do they simply create more violent criminals? One thing is certain: inside the world's toughest prisons, survival is not just about avoiding violence. It's about maintaining hope in a place designed to break the human spirit. This is a full-length original story capturing the reality of life inside the most dangerous prisons. Would you like any specific section expanded or adjusted?